So we discussed about few things in the last lecture. Very basic, very basics about the things. It was mainly about the configuration, right? Because we can't do configuration later on, right? So over here we are done with these things, right? Now the next thing is the major thing, that is concept of object-oriented programming. So here we would be discussing about few things that we would be needing, right? And that is the concept of classes. So how would we be able to work with the classes and how we can create objects and other things, right? So let us just quickly move to Eclipse. And someone's mic is on, could you please switch it off? If you have any queries, you can feel free to enable your mic. Okay, so over here now what we'll do is we'll create a new package. Now the question is, what is a package? Package is a folder where we can keep the code, right? It is a kind of a source folder inside the folder inside the source folder actually. So it is a kind of source folder where we keep the source files, right? For example, these Java files, these are our source files. Okay, so here I'll create a new package, right click, new, then package. Now I can provide the package name any I would want to. Say I will provide the package name as day2. Right now, if you notice something, if I provide a space in between, it won't pick it up. So you need to remove that space. Now over here we can click on finish and it is done. Now the next thing is, say, creating classes inside it. Now we can create a class and you would notice something. There is a package name already defined with this class name, right? So what I'll do is I'll create a class and say I'll name this as laptop. Okay, so laptop is the class name. Now here whatever things we need to specify, we need to specify those things inside these brackets only. So here I would be specifying some stuff. For example, we would like to have few things initialized and say those things are, say, a price of the laptop, so int price, and I would like to have something specified else as well, that is, say, the name of the laptop, right? So string name. Right, so there are two things we have specified over here in this particular class. Now the thing is that there are two things. Either we can access these things inside this class directly and work in this particular class, or have this information used somewhere else, right? So the thing is, we would be using this particular class somewhere else. Now how would we be able to do that? Let me just close all the older, say, Java files. Now I'll create another class in day2 and I'll name this class as, say, test laptop. Right? Now in test laptop I would be specifying something that would allow me to have access to the laptop class and the code executed. So first thing first, wherever we need to execute the code, we need to provide the main method, right? Main is the method which will be executed whenever we try to run the code. Okay, now here in this method what we would be doing is we would be we would be calling this laptop class. So how would we be able to do that? Now to create a new object, we would be calling it an object. So we can create an object like this, say new laptop. Now if I run this, what would happen is it will be simply executed. Just a second. Yeah, so it will be simply executed and here we do not see any output, but yes, this has been executed. Okay, so what does this line mean? Now this means that we are calling this laptop class and we are, say, creating an object of it here. Now what is an object? Object is something which allows us to have access to the class elements, right? This means that we have this laptop class, right? So it has price and name, right? So these are the two things it has. Now what I did, I used a command new laptop. So what it did, it came here, right? It came here and it picked up these things and blocked some memory for these things. Now this means that I can have access to these things with the help of this, right? But the thing is that how we can use it, where we can use it. So whenever we have this specified, okay, we need to be able to access this thing. Now to be able to access this thing, we need to store this object somewhere, right? We need to store this value somewhere. So how would we be able to store it? Now what we would be doing is, we would be creating an object reference, we would be creating a variable, right, of the name of the type as the class name itself. So laptop L equals to new laptop. Now what does this whole thing mean? This means that we are creating an object, allocating it to L variable, right? L is called as object reference, right? Now this means that L is someone which would be facilitating me the access, right? Now what kind of access? The access to the things inside this laptop class, right? So what are the things inside? Price and name. So how would I be able to access them? Let us just see that. Now to have access to these things, it is pretty simple. All we have to do is that we need to specify something like this, L.price. I can set the value to the price variable here now. For example, I would like to specify the price as $9.99. Okay, so this is done. Now what about the another variable, that is name? I can set that as well. So L.name, right, equals to say MacBook, right? So over here this is done. Now we have stored some data inside these two variables, that is price and name, right? So how would we be able to access these as well? So we can get the data as well, system.out.println, and we can specify like this, say price, right, equals to L.price, and in the same way say name, right? So name equals to L.name, right? So over here these are the two things that we have. Now if I run this code, what would happen? If you notice something, we are getting the information here what we need, right? Now this is okay, but the thing is that can we have more objects created, right? Can we have any number of objects we would want to create, right? So actually yes, we can do that. Now how we can do that? So this is simple. We can again write something like this, that is laptop say L2 equals to new laptop. Okay, so this is done and a new object would be created. So what is happening in the backend, right? So the thing is that whenever we write this line, say new laptop, right? Just a second. Okay, so what happens is that a memory is getting allocated to the things inside this class, right? For example, there are two things, price and name, right? Now there is another thing being written again, that is say new laptop, right? So again a new object would be created. This means that the things that we have earlier are also again getting generated, right? The memory is being blocked again, right? Now this means that this particular object, right, has nothing to do with this one, right? This is a separate entity, this is a separate entity, right? Suppose this is at location 10, right, and this is at location 19, right? So these have their different locations. Now what does this mean? This means that we can independently deal with them, right? So here we can independently deal with these things, right? This means that this will have the value that I specified, for example 100, and this has value 999, right? Just a second, let me just type these. Okay, so say 999 and name MacBook, and on the other hand this has the price 1299 and say this has the name say XPS, right? So these two things have their own different set of values, right? So how this works, let us just see that. Now over here we can specify the value L2 dot price, right, equals to say 1299, right? I can provide a name here, say L2 dot name, and I would provide a dummy name here, or say some name, say XYZ, right? A dummy name would be fine, right? Now to access these things, again it is very simple. The simplest thing is providing these things. I'll just change few stuff, right? So system.out.println, and I'll simply say print L2 price, right, equals to L2 dot price, right? And in the same way, next thing, system.out.println L2 name equals to, and I made a mistake here, let me just correct this immediately. Yeah, so I've corrected it, L2 dot name, right? Now I can have access to these things. Now the next thing is we can have more objects created here as well, right? Now what if I write something like this, laptop L3 equals to null. Now what does this mean? This means that, just a second, let me just copy it here, right? This simply means that we have the object reference created, right? So this is the part which is our object reference, right? But no value is assigned, right? So null means that no object is assigned to it. This means that this is empty right now, right? This means that we can have any object assigned to it at any point of time. This is just a variable carrying some value, right? What is the value? The address of the object, right? For example, here this is the object, so it is just carrying the address of this particular object. L2 is carrying the address of new laptop object, right? Now this means that I can have the object of L1 allocated to L3 as well, or L allocated to L3 as well. Yes. So how? L3 equals to L, right? I just did this thing. Okay, now what does this mean? This means that suppose these are the three objects. Just a second. So say not a circle, just a second, what is happening? Yeah, so object 1, object 2 and object 3. Let us just consider there is no third object, but yes, we have a variable, right? And this is L1 or L2 and this is L, right? And we have L3 here. Now we have an option of creating a new object here and allocating to it, or what we can do is that, just a second, what we can do is that we can allocate these something like this: L2, say L, and this is L3, right? Either there is an option I can pass on the values like this, I can allocate the values like this, or instead of supplying the new object, okay, what I'll do is I'll make it use the object of L, right? This means that indirectly it is also pointing to this thing, right? Now over here, this means that if I specify like this and if I print out the data, right, and it is say L3 price equals to L3 dot price, right, and say L3 dot name, right? So L3 name, L3 dot name, right? This means that we can work with it and we can get the values of L, and this is what we are able to see as well, right? Price and name are having the same values, right? Now what if I want to allocate another object? No worries, I can create a new object anywhere, anytime by just simply specifying this thing, right? Yeah, feel free to ask.
Sorry to disturb.
Yeah.
What is the advantage of this when you already have an object with L?
Yeah.
What is the advantage of having L3 and applying the same value?
See, the thing is that I'm just showing you how the objects play around, right? How the objects work and how you can use the values anywhere else, right? There may be some stage where you may need to change the object or you need to pass on the object somewhere else, right? Which we would be learning later on, right? The thing is that the basic thing is that we can have object allocated to the reference variable here. This is a variable which references to the location of a memory, right? So if I type new laptop here, a new object would be created which would be allocated to L3, right? Instead of using the older object, right? Now the thing is that over here, right now I'm creating a new object. This means that I need to allocate the values. If I try to run this right now, it won't be having any values, right? And you can see that 0 and null is getting printed because there are no values. I can allocate the values. So L3 dot name is say ABC, right? And L3 dot price is say 1599. Okay, now if I run this, the values are changed over here and you can see the reflected values. Now if I use the object of L1, right, so what I'll do is I'll just simply specify this object that I want to make use of the object L, right? Now over here if I run this thing, I'm getting this value, right? But what if I want to have the things inside L as well, right? So how would I be able to get that? So this would be, just a second, so this would be simply like this, that is over here system.out.println, and I'll print a more detailed information, L1 or L price equals to this, say L dot price, okay, and say this thing, okay, that is L name equals to L dot name. Now you would notice something over here. When I'll run this code, you would see that the values in L are also changed, right? So the thing is that whenever we are making changes, the values are getting changed in the memory itself, in the memory location itself. So the object is having the values changed itself. We are changing values in one object reference and the other is getting updated itself, just because we are using something, that is we are sharing the same object at both of the places, right? Now this helps us in having a consistent data, right? Because at one location if the data is being updated, automatically at the another location the data will get updated, right? So just give me a second guys, my internet may go off anytime. Let me just have a backup connection. And here it is on. So okay, so over here this means that we can play around with these things. Now why we are discussing these things, right? Why we are discussing about creation of objects and working with these objects, right? So let us just discuss about Selenium part now. So let us just switch over to Selenium. So what I'll do is I'll create a new class, right? And this would be Selenium Basics, right? So here in Selenium Basics, what we would be doing is, see, we learned something yesterday, that was say writing new Chrome driver, right? So over here what all things are happening? So there is a class inside the Selenium libraries, right, named as Chrome driver, whose object is being created, right? Now over here there are few things that are getting initialized. So let us just learn about the initialization now. Okay, so coming back to this, now over here the thing is that we created variables, we worked with the values, right? Now let me just do one thing. Let me have the new object over here, or let us just remove this, disable this part for a while. Okay, I'm commenting out this particular part. We'll be dealing with this particular part only right now. Okay, so we have this object thing, right? We have this class, laptop class, which has some data inside it. Okay, now the thing is that we have the data which are just two variables. Now what if we would want to have some methods as well, right? So we can have the methods. How we can add them? Say I'd like to have a method named as say welcome, or say a laptop. Say I want to shut down laptop, right? So shut down laptop. Now you can type in the method name you would want to have, and you can hit control space. It will immediately suggest you something, shut down method stub. Double click here and automatically a new method would be created, right? Right now let us not just get into public and private thing. I'll just remove this part, right? We'll be coming to these things later on, right? Now over here we have this method where we can specify data. What kind of data? Whatever data we would like to have. Say I'd like to print shutting down, right? And I can concatenate the data as well. So whatever data is in my string variable name, I can print that as well, right? So this means that if I go there and here, if in my test class, what I'll do is I'll simply call out a method that is say L dot shutdown. What would happen? Let us just see that. So here if I execute it, there is a problem. Let us just see what is the problem. Okay, so in laptop shutdown is here. I have provided the information correctly. Let us just go back. Okay, so it is not allowing me to execute just because of this thing. Okay, let us go back. There was no problem in my code. There was a problem in Selenium Basics.java. You can ignore it right now. Let us just run this, and this is executing file, and you can see that it is printing shutting down MacBook. This means that we can call shutdown method anywhere. For example, with L2. Right, so I'll uncomment this particular part, and in the ending I'll specify L2 dot shutdown. Now you would notice something. It is not printing shutting down MacBook. It will be printing shutting down XYZ. Right, now the thing is that we are able to access the things which are related to that object. Right, we are not getting access to the other object's data. Right, so functions are okay. Now the thing is that suppose we have a laptop, right? And there is one thing that I would want to have. Laptop has a battery, right? So int battery count, right? Let us just suppose we have a variable battery count. This means that we can allocate the value here as well, right? So what I need to do, I need to specify the value like this, L dot battery count, and I can specify the value. Say it has one battery, right? Every laptop has a single battery. Now over here the same thing, L2 dot battery count, and I can allocate the value as 1, which is done. We can print this data as well, right? So system.out.println and say battery equals to say L dot battery count, right? And I can specify it like this, right? Now in the same way I can have this information printed here in L2 as well. So system.out.println L2 battery count, right, equals to this, that is L2 dot battery. Okay, if I run this, you're getting the same information again, right? Battery count 1, battery count 1. Now the thing is that right now we just have 10 to 15 lines of code and it is working fine for us, and even if it is blocking more memory, that is okay. But the thing is that whenever we are using battery count variable, the memory is being blocked again and again, right? Suppose it consumes 20 MB, just suppose, right? This means that every time 20 MB would be blocked, which is of no use because it is containing the same data, right? So what would we be able to do with this, which would allow us to save the memory location as well, memory space as well, and have access to the same data, right? So how would we be able to do that? By simply specifying something before the variable, that is static. Now what is static? Static is something, this tells the class that this has the value which is not changing with the object, right? This means that a say battery count variable is not inside this. We have price variable and name variable here as well and here as well. But the battery count variable is outside the object say scope, right? It is all outside the object scope. This means that now as I've made a change here, I'll save this. Immediately if we go back, you will notice something. There is a problem in our code, right? There are some warning marks, and the warning is the static field laptop.battery count should be accessed in a static way. This means that now we cannot access battery count directly with the help of an object. So what we need to do, we need to specify it something like this, right? So laptop.battery count. So wherever battery count is being used, we can use it like this. Now this means that if I need to have this value, I can simply specify like this, laptop.battery count. Even if I can remove this line now because it is not needed. Laptop class object is having the value, right, that it can have. The lap class is already having the value that it can have, right? This means that I can change it here as well. And the thing is that if I run this now, okay, so let us just run this code, and here I'll run this code. Now you would see the same output, but there is a difference. The difference is that now memory is being saved and we can share the value among the places wherever we need that, and the value would be retrieved directly. We don't need to create an object and say save it in a referenced variable, right? We can simply access it. Yeah, you feel free to ask. Yeah, class.variable name, and we can access that particular variable. Okay, but only those variables which are static, right, which have the static thing written over here. Now, does this mean that we can have static methods as well? Yes. So let us just create a static method. For example, say void static void start laptop, right? Or say let us just create a method show battery count, right? Now over here, what if I do something? What I can do, let us just see that. First of all, let me just correct this name. Yeah, show battery count, it is okay. Now one thing, whenever you are writing the code, make sure that you are following some kind of code convention. For example, this is camel casing, right? This helps us in other person reading the code and understand the code easily. Okay, now coming back to this, this means that we can print the number of batteries it has. So say I'd like to have the information like this, say laptop name has battery count, right? So can I try that? Name. But if we notice something, I'm able to access the name variable. Let us just see that. So name plus has battery count, right? So has battery count, right? And say what is the battery count? Battery count, right? Now over here, if you notice something, there is a problem. What is the problem? If you see this show battery count method name, there it is highlighted and there is a X written over here. What is this? Multiple markers at this particular point of time. So it is say getting some kind of error, right? So over here, what is the error? Let us just see that once. Maybe we have made a problem over here, maybe we have made a mistake over here. So this line is okay. Now coming back to this, void is an invalid type of the for the variable show battery count. Now ignore this. The problem is that name is a variable which is non-static, right? This means that the value is coming from the object, right? But we don't have access to this. So this means that we cannot have access to the name variable here. This means that if I edit the information like this, battery count this, you can see that we would be able to execute it. Okay, there is a problem. I forgot to provide this thing. Let me just go back first. Right, I forgot one basic thing. Now you can see that name is showing me change name to static. Name is not non-static right now, right? So it has the value which is say directly related to the object. Okay, so we cannot access it. So what we have to do is that we just need to have some information printed over here which contains static data. non-static cannot be accessed in a method which is static, right? So I can print this information now. So over here I will be calling this method how laptop dot say show battery count, right? Now if I run this, you can see that say battery count is 1, right? So I can print this information. Now the thing is that can we have access to the static data over here in this? Actually, in a non-static method, we can have access to the static data, but in a static method, we cannot have access to non-static variable, right? This means that if I allocate a value here itself, right, and I don't allocate a value here, this will work for us. Okay, so over here I can print the information something like this, say has battery count, right? And what is the battery count? That is variable battery count. Now if I run this, you would notice that shutting down MacBook has battery count 1. This means that we can have access to the static data in a non-static method, but we cannot have access to non-static data in a static method, right? So this is something that you need to be aware of. Now enough with the basics of say object creation and working with the objects. Now let us just move to Selenium Basics. So this was the method, this was the command that we fired and it opened Chrome browser for us, right? For example, this, right? I'm again running it and it will be opening Chrome browser for me. Now it may not open Chrome browser for you, and there is a reason behind it. I'll tell you that reason now. So over here the browser is opening up, but what is happening over here? So there is the browser being initialized. Okay, now this means that something is happening in the backend. So what Selenium does is, whenever we call this method, right, whenever we create a new object, what happens is that Selenium starts interacting with the browser, but it cannot interact directly. So there is something needed. That is, let us just go to this official website of Selenium and see what is needed. So there is an intermediator whenever there is, whenever we deal with Selenium, right? So suppose this is our code, right, and this is our browser, right? Now the thing is that, just a second, the windows are a bit larger. Say this is our code, right, and this is our browser. Now the thing is that whenever code needs to interact with the browser, it cannot interact directly. What happens is that we have an intermediator in between, that is the browser driver, right? What happens is that we write the code here, say we write the line new Chrome driver, right? So what happens is that whenever we write this line, okay, the thing is the code starts interacting with the browser, but how? The request gets forwarded to the driver forwards that request to the browser, right? And whatever the result is, browser provides that result to the driver and driver provides that result back to the say console, right? So whatever happens with the help of a driver. So how would you be able to have a driver, and who provides the drivers? Now drivers are provided by the say the developer itself. For example, if I'm using Google Chrome, right? So these would be provided to me by the Chrome team, right? So what you have to do to find the drivers, the easiest way is going to the official website of Selenium, going to downloads and scrolling a bit here, and you would find a section named as browsers. Now these are the browsers which are officially supported, but the drivers are not provided by the browser, say Selenium. These are provided by the browser companies. For example, Firefox is having a Gecko driver, right, which is provided by Mozilla. Internet Explorer has the browser driver which is provided by the Selenium guys itself. This is the only driver which is provided by the Selenium guys itself, which is this Internet Explorer driver server, right? So right now, as we are dealing with Chrome, let us just configure Chrome. So somewhere over here you would find the link for Chrome. So there is a documentation link. Go to the documentation, and here you would see that this is the page where it would be telling us about the downloads, right? So which version you need to download, right? As you can see that there are some versions mentioned. So the best thing is that to check the current browser version, go to these three triple dots, right? Then go to help and then go to about Google Chrome. Here on this screen you would be able to find the version which is installed on your machine. So it is 83.0.4000 series, right? So 83.0.4103 is my version. Now going back to the website, 83.0.4103, 83.0.4103. Ignore the 116 part, right? So this is the version that we need to download. Simply click here and it will be taking you to the page where you can download the file accordingly. For example, if you're using Linux 64-bit, you need to download this particular version. If you're using Macintosh, then you need to download this particular file. And if you're using Windows, any variant, 64-bit or 32-bit, you need to download this particular file. Now it will take a little bit time for the download to be done. Once downloaded, you can open this zip file, and this is the file inside this, right? That is Chrome driver.exe. Now what you have to do is that you need to configure your system for this particular exe file, so that whenever the Selenium code gets executed, right, it gets access to that particular executable file. Okay, so over here, copy this file and extract it somewhere, right? For example, in my A drive, I have this essentials folder where we have a WebDriver folder, and I have kept this Chrome driver.exe here. Now I have done this thing. Now what's next is copying this path, right? Make sure that you keep it in a folder which you remember, right? So now simply copy this path, and what you have to do next is to configure this particular path for the file to be accessed. How? This is easy. Open Start menu and start typing environment variables, right? Or even if you type env, it will be giving you two options: edit the system environment variables and edit the environment variables for your account, right? In case if you're using an office machine, you won't be able to have access to this particular field, so you can simply access this particular field. Here what you guys have to do is that for your user account, okay, what you have to do, scroll down a bit on the upper section and look for the path variable, right? Once here, simply provide that path that you copied and click on OK. As it is already done for me for the system variables part, I won't be able to show you right now. Let me just show it to you, right? So over here, this is done for me here, A Essentials WebDriver, right? So just save this path, click on OK, click on OK here, and restart your Eclipse. Make sure that you restart your Eclipse, otherwise you will be facing issues and you won't get to know that what was the problem. Okay, now whenever you're dealing with Google Chrome, make sure that you have the driver and the browser with the same version. What happens is that whenever you open Chrome, sometimes the Chrome gets updated and the code stops working. So this is the clear issue with the WebDriver executable. Update your executable and you're good to go. Now about the another browser, that is say Firefox browser, right? So let me just comment out this particular part. Now we would be working with Firefox browser, right? So new Firefox driver, right? So this will be opening a new browser instance for Firefox browser. Now what is happening around over here, right? In this case, whenever we call this method, we create the object of Firefox browser. The executable for Firefox driver gets fired up and the browser opens up like this, right? Now how it happens here? Now the same way, you need to open the Firefox browser and say make sure that you have the stable version of Firefox. How? Click on this hamburger, go to help and about Firefox, right? So right now I'm having 77.0.1. so this is the stable version of Firefox, right? Now over here for the Gecko driver, now Firefox depends on Gecko driver. Going back to the official website of Selenium, right? Here in the browsers section you would find Firefox documentation. Click here and you would be taken to this particular page. So here you can see that the minimum version supported by Firefox driver right now is 60, okay, and the latest version is 0.26.0, right? Where to download? Click on Gecko driver releases and you will be taken to this particular page where you can download this particular file by scrolling down. Now it gives us a more of a flexible options. Linux 32-bit, Linux 64-bit, then Macintosh it has only one variant, so no need to worry about it, and Windows 32-bit and Windows 64-bit. So as I'm using Windows 64-bit, I'll download these files, right? Once the download is complete, what you have to do is that you just need to keep the files in the same location where you kept the Google Chrome driver, right? So extract this exe in the same location, that is this location, right? That is right now it is this A essentials web driver and have the Gecko driver with me as well, right? Now this is facilitating me the usage of Firefox browser. You can see these logs. These are the logs, these are not the errors. Gecko driver provides these logs, right? Now this means that we can work with Internet Explorer as well. Yes. So how would we be able to do that? For that, what we need to do, we need to go back to this official website, scroll up and look for something that is IE driver server. I'm using 64-bit, so click here and it will immediately start the download of this file. Download it and say extract it. Okay, so over here this file is downloaded for us and keep it in the same location. You don't have to do any configuration then. Okay, now over here you would be able to open Internet Explorer browser with this particular part of code, that is new Internet Explorer driver, right? And you can see that for me Internet Explorer would open, right? This is about initializing the objects, but there are a lot of other things that we can do, right? We can deal with the browsers and we can say interact with the pages, right? So how would I be able to do that, right? So let us just go with Chrome driver. Okay, so here we created new Chrome driver which opened the browser for us, but the object is getting created and it is getting vanished because we are not able to reuse it. Now to reuse it, what we have to do, we need to create a variable of type Chrome driver, So Chrome driver and say cd equals to new Chrome driver, right? Now what does this mean? This means that the object of Chrome driver is being allocated to the reference cd. Now with the help of cd we can perform some actions. For example, I would like to go to a web page. What web page? Let us see. So cd dot get, and I would like to open the website, say https www.qtpselenium.com, our own official website, right? So let us just run this code now. So over here you can see that the browser is opening. It will take a little bit time, and you can see that Chrome driver was started successfully. This is the log we are getting. The browser is opening, and here it has taken us to the qtpselenium.com web page, right? So this is what we wanted to see, and this is what we are getting as well, right? Now over here I can close this. Now can I do the same thing in, say, Firefox browser? Yes. So let us just comment out this particular part of code, and we'll deal with Firefox browser, right? So over here, Firefox driver fd equals to new Firefox driver, and we can open a page, right? So fd dot get, and what is the page? Let us say go to Facebook homepage. So https www.facebook.com. Now you may have noticed something. I am providing the links in this pattern: https, then colon, then double forward slash, and then the URL, and then forward slash. So what does this mean? This is a fully qualified URL, right? Which a browser understands. Now in case if you're confused how to get this URL, don't worry. Go to the website that you would want to have access to. For example, say facebook.com, right? So you have opened this page, click here, right? And you can see the whole URL, right? Let me just show you once again. Click here, copy this, go back to the code, and you can paste it here. See, it is the fully qualified URL, https www.facebook.com, right? Now let us just try running this code. I'm using a shortcut key to run my code, that is F11 key. So Control F11 runs the code, and we would be able to run the code that we would want to have executed, right? And here my code is executing. It will take a little bit time. It usually takes a little bit time, and once done we would be able to see the browser opening up and taking us to facebook.com, right? So over here it is taking us to facebook.com, and you can see the screen here now, right? This means that browser is understanding the instructions provided by us, right? Now can we do other things? Yes, we can do other things. Say what all things we can do. Now the best thing is that going to the Java doc, right, of Selenium. So this is the downloads page, Java API docs. Go there and start looking up for things. For example, we are dealing with Chrome driver, right? So over here there would be Chrome driver written somewhere over here. So this is my Chrome driver. If we scroll down, it is telling us that these are the things that we can deal with, right? So these are the methods, right? And you can see that what all things we can do with this as well. So there is some, say, knowledge about these as well, right? Now over here what we would be doing is we would be, say, getting the URL, right, or getting the title, right? So over here WebDriver tells us few things that we can do, right? Get current URL, get page source, get title. So let us just try getting the title of the page. Would we be able to? Let us just see that. So over here fd dot get title, but this is the data type which is being returned as string, right? So what we need to do, we need to print it. So system.out.println and paste this part, fd.getTitle. Now it will be printing in the title of the page here, right? Control F11, Firefox browser will open. Now the same command would work in Chrome driver as well, so no need to worry. Okay. So what we have learned in this lecture, we have learned that how we can deal with object creation and how we can work with objects and how we can work with the objects of Selenium, how we can work with the code of Selenium, right? Now you can see that this page is opened and we have got the text here, Facebook login or sign up, right? This is the same thing written over here as well, Facebook login or sign up, right? So we are getting the things that we want. Now in the next lecture we would be discussing about the interfaces, what interfaces are and how these are useful in case of Selenium, right? So this was for today's lecture. If you have any queries, you can feel free to ask.